Hello, and welcome back to the Going Off Track podcast. I am Catherine, and welcome to episode 21 of our F101 Spring Break Sprint, where, in case you've missed it, the entire series is linked above and down below in the show notes. But if this is your first episode, long story short, I am diving into old F1 lore from before I became a fan midway through the 2021 season, helping to educate other Drive to Survive era F1 fans about the sport. Now, yesterday, we talked about the drivers with the most races without actually winning a race. So don't forget to head back to that one in case you've missed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a video in this series or all season long, and so I can continue to inflict my motorsport opinions upon the greater population. And if you're listening on your preferred podcast platform, don't forget to leave a 5-star review there too. Now, how did the greatest to ever do it, Michael Schumacher, how did he actually get onto the F1 grid? Which is not how you would typically expect it to go for a number of reasons. First things first, he made his debut in Formula One midway through the 1991 season, which had a lot of really interesting things happen. So first we have to talk about the Jordan F1 team. And now the Jordan F1 team is not actually Michael Schumacher's team, but we'll get there. But the Jordan F1 team had two drivers, Andrea De Cesaris, who we talked about in the last episode. He's the number 2 most experienced driver to have never won an F1 race, and a man named Bertrand Gachot. Now, Gachot in December of 1990, so we're talking the F1 off season, was in a road rage incident with a taxi cab driver and was ultimately sentenced to 18 months in jail. Now, he was released 2 months later and actually attempted to qualify in Australia for the season finale. So same season in 1991. But he was not going to be available first and foremost for the Belgian Grand Prix because his trial was scheduled for a week before. And then once he lost his appeal and was going to be going straight to jail, Jordan needed to find another driver. Enter Mercedes. Mercedes rocks up to Jordan F1 team and goes to Eddie Jordan and says, we're going to give you $150,000 to let Michael Schumacher debut in Spa in your car. Now, Michael Schumacher was doing really well in the lower series where he was driving with Mercedes, but he had never actually driven at Spa at all. He had only ever spectated at that track. At the time, Mercedes was not on the F1 grid, but having a team pay another team is actually something that is relatively common, or it's not uncommon in sport. What is uncommon is to have an organization paying for a driver to have a space on the grid who actually turns out to be really good. Because if you think about so-called pay drivers, you think of like Lance Stroll is a pay driver, like his dad owns the team that he's driving for, or Nikita Mazepin, who drove at Haas for a couple years, which his father was a bigwig oligarch in Russia, and Haas needed that Russia money in order to run their team, be financially solvent enough to survive a season, even though Nikita Mazepin is quite possibly well known for being one of the worst Formula One drivers in the history of the sport. So usually when you think of pay drivers, you think of that. Logan Sargent, his family comes from money, and that money was able to influence the teams that were interested in him as he moved up the series to, drivers who have significant financial backing. Obviously, their ability to perform is considered, but sometimes their financial backing is more important. Sergio Perez stayed at Red Bull for as long as he did because he had significant Mexican telecom backing that kept him in his seat for perhaps longer than people think that he should have stayed. And obviously on this podcast, we've talked about very heavily of how when Red Bull should have moved away from Sergio Perez, especially when they had the Daniel Ricciardo backlog. Throwback to that. You can look at those episodes. They're there. But the concept of pay drivers typically has a not so positive connotation. I mean, Sergio Perez it would be one of the more positive ones, but so is Michael Schumacher. So Mercedes pays Jordan to let Michael Schumacher make the debut in Spa and actually qualified P7th. He tested the Jordan for half of a day and then raced on a circuit that he never raced at. Now, unfortunately, Schumacher's race lasted one single lap, but it was his qualifying that really got him his seat in Formula One. And here's where we need to talk about some contracts. So he retired from the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa with clutch problems on the first lap. But team boss at Benetton, a little friend of ours named Flavio Briatore, took one look at him and said, I want that guy. problem is he had 2 drivers already. But despite there being it's called an agreement in principle between Jordan and Mercedes, who were representing Schumacher at the time. Schumacher ended up at Benetton at that next race at Monza, and there was a little bit of legal shenaniganery going around there. Benetton kind of said, "Hey, we interpret this agreement in principle as this instead of this," and they kind of won that court battle. And this is actually kind of similar to how McLaren got Oscar Piastri out from under the thumb of Alpine when they were changing up their drivers a few years ago. I mean, it was a little bit more complicated than that, and Alpine did screw up his contract, but it's all very similar. But yeah, Flavio Briatore basically got him out of the agreement with Jordan, which was supposed to last from 1991 to 1993. But he actually had to oust a driver from his own team, Roberto Moreno, at the second seat at Benetton. And this actually pissed off Nelson Piquet, the other Benetton driver, so much that he ended up quitting for a minute. And even I think they said it was Ayrton Senna who said that he did not approve of how Flavio was backdoor negotiating, which, tracks. But anyway, Michael Schumacher would finish P3 in the championship in 1992, so the following season, which was his first full season at F1 with Benetton, after doing less than 1 lap with Jordan in the Jordan car, the half-day testing, the practice session in less than 1 lap. Michael Schumacher never drove for Jordan again. He was with Benetton. He, like I said, finished P3 in the championship in 1992, two behind Angel Mansell, which we talked about in episode 13, how he got to his first F1 championship win after 13 seasons. He was P4 in 1993 before winning his very first title in 1994. So it's just so interesting, like when you think of the days of yore and the previous iterations of F1, where you can kind of just rock up and say, "Hey, I'm going to drive in F1 today," or the way that you come in mid-season and things like that. It's very interesting how it was one qualifying session that was able to convince a team to go after Michael Schumacher, who then ultimately became 7-time world champion and one of the best drivers to ever do it. So it's kind of cool. It's not like just, graduating from F2 and getting a contract. But anyway, coming up next, we are going to relive some cool F1 special liveries, and not just talking about every special livery that V-Carb has come out with since they became the brand of the second Red Bull team. So don't forget to subscribe, because there are going to be some fun liveries and maybe even some fun Ferrari liveries, which is, I know, shocking considering how much we do not like their liveries right now. But so anyway, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for going off track with me, and I will see you in the next one.